Thank you for tuning in to Beers and Bullshit, to the inaugural episode here. My name is Cole Blenner. I appreciate you guys tuning in here tonight. It's going to be a podcast where we talk about, beer and bullshit. We're going to drink a couple of brews, shout out that beer, and then just kind of dive into whatever we come across, whether it's going to be sports, politics, culture, try not to piss anybody off, but also at the same time, we're just going to have fun. To introduce the beer that we are drinking here today from Omaha's Brickery Brewing. It's 2019's Great American Beer Festival winner, the Jalapeno Pineapple Pilsner. And joining me on the podcast and drinking this fine brew with me here today is Mr. Layne Brings Plenty. Mr. Brings Plenty, how you doing?
Hey, welcome and welcome. Thank you, and thank you for having me. Happy to be here. Happy to be on the first inaugural beer and bowl. Anyways, wow, that hit quick.
Yeah, that jalapeno cheddar beer. I swear, I'm gonna probably feel that fucker in the morning though. Well,
like I said, I'm surprised Jace picked this one. Bless his heart. Jalapenos have been getting the best of him, like I mentioned earlier. So this is kind of a bold move.
Well, I mean, let's be honest here. He's about as white as sour cream. Love you, Jace. You'll be hearing Jace on the show here soon. But Jace made the bold move yesterday to put jalapenos on his pizza, and it murdered him this morning to the point where our manager apparently thought he was on lunch. He was in the bathroom so long, and then he shows up tonight here for the podcast when we were recording earlier, and he's like, "I brought a jalapeno pineapple beer," and we're like, "Man, you're just a glutton for punishment, aren't you, bud?"
Yes. He does not like his stomach, it seems. I kind of get carried away with buffalo sauce at times. But going what he was going through, I haven't hit that level yet. And if I hit that level, I think I'll be pumping the brakes. I don't think I'll be, getting a buffalo beer the next night.
Oh, Pepto and water's the diet after that. Pepto and water until the system cleans out again. But before we gross anybody out here, we'll probably move on. But once again, that is Omaha's Brickery Brewing Company. I believe they're out of Minnesota. 2019's Gold Great American Beer Festival winner for chili beer. This podcast is sponsored by Top Wave Studios, so we're going to go ahead and shout out Paul Wolf here, who's doing the audio recording. Just going to go ahead and talk a little bit of shit. We had 30 minutes wrapped up with four of the boys. And all of a sudden, due to technological errors, we got all of that erased. And due to girlfriends and wives, we now have the strong two remaining. And what we're going to be getting in here today, just because a week beforehand, we're going to pander to just the great America and talk about the Super Bowl. Brought Layne on here. You'll be hearing from him often, but he is a Chiefs fan. Obviously has a very personal stake in the game. So, Layne, how's it feel to be back after a 50-year drought? You guys won last year. Coming back against the 49ers. Obviously, there's the haters out there, but you guys have been pretty favored most of the season. So kind of expecting that all year and, roughly doing better this year record-wise. How does it feel to be back?
Yeah, no, it feels great. It's been kind of surreal. Like I said earlier, it kind of feels like I never thought I'd ever see us obviously get to a Super Bowl. I was hoping we would one day. But just to have a team that actually has the motto of, run it back, and they're excited and they have that mentality that we can keep doing this and doing it for more than just a couple of years. To have a team that's actually invested in this system and the schemes and the coaches, and just having guys that have the ability to step up and make those plays. Like I mentioned before, on paper, we don't have a ton of talent, but we have guys that step up and make those big plays, especially it goes unnoticed. Dan Sorensen, his name's getting mentioned more and more, and rightfully so, but he's one of those big names. And like I mentioned before, too, Matthew kind of being that quarterback on our defensive side, that was a huge signing for us. And I think that was something big for him, too, in his career, actually. Going to the Cardinals, I think they made the playoffs. I don't know if it was his first year or second year, but there was an old clip, actually, of him kind of trying to take leadership of that defense at a young age. And I think that just kind of said a lot about him. And then also on the Texans' defense, they were a great squad themselves. Unfortunately, they just couldn't make it far enough. So that was huge for us to finally sign someone. And, I miss Eric Berry. He was a hell of a safety for us, but unfortunately with cancer and other things that he encountered in his career, it was nice to finally find another safety that could, play that big role and be that quarterback on the defensive side. But, yeah, it's just great to be back. It's great to have that team that can do it for more than just 1 year and, stay steady and consistent. It would seem like an off year when you look at all the numbers, but, we made it and we won games. 14-2 is tough to do in the NFL, but we powered through. The Steelers looked tough, but they fell off, giving us the number one seed. Not giving, we earned that number one seed, but having home field advantage, even with Corona and less fans, was still a huge help. So, it's good to see us go back again and good to see Tom Brady again. It'll be a fun matchup.
Well, and that's the crazy thing too is when you look at the Chiefs this year. I mean, we can kind of break it down to the last 3 years of the Chiefs dynasty, starting in 2018, obviously, with that record-breaking offense just falling short in the playoffs. Last year, running it back, some season injury problems for Patrick Mahomes, kind of some questions about the defense too, but, they wrapped a bow on it in the playoffs. Won last year against the Niners, like we mentioned. Kind of a very similar narrative, it seems, this year with you guys as well, because when we started off at the beginning of the year, everybody knows the offense is Patrick Mahomes. You get Clyde Edwards-Helaire there, and then you bring back Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman, Sammy Watkins, Travis Kelce. And, I mean, you start to get this feeling that this offense, I mean, on top of just the pure talent that's there, the chemistry starts gelling. Halfway along the way, you pick up Le'Veon Bell, and I think he's been a decent impact player. Obviously not the player he once was in Pittsburgh 3-4 years ago, but, still very good in the pass protection game, and I think picks up a lot where, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, kind of falters a little bit as a rookie, and it's kind of nice to see, the bow that they put on it just to get back to the Super Bowl. And as you talked about, too, the defense. I mean, earlier I was kind of mentioning in the first recording how in the beginning of the year I was talking a lot of shit about the Chiefs defense because they've been known to go wet paper a little bit, just kind of not really defend anybody. But it seems like, towards the end of the year, they really kind of, brought it all together. Matthew being, the kind of the quarterback of the defense, Dan Sorensen coming out. You got Frank Clark and Chris Jones rushing the passer. Linebacking core is extremely underrated. I'm just going to kind of dive into it right now. When we talk about the defenses here, Tampa Bay's defense, we're gonna break that down probably right after here. But the Chiefs, 10th in points allowed, 16th in yards, 10th in turnovers, and I believe it was a +6 turnover differential. So, very impressive numbers. Obviously, either top half or top 10 in everything. Comparing that to Tampa Bay, you got 8th in points allowed, 6th in yards, 5th in turnovers, and then a +8 turnover differential. So just slightly better numbers. But man, that Tampa Bay defense though. We saw it in the NFC Championship game with Rodgers, and the pass rush just got to him. Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh, Shaq Barrett, everybody that they bring with that defense. It was crazy. I mean, what did you see when you were watching that game? Just the power of the Bucs defense.
No, it's scary. And like what was mentioned before, Devin White just being the kind of the centerpiece of their defense, and just having the ability to fly all over the field. He's great in coverage, and he's great in the run support too. Antoine Winfield had a hell of a rookie year. I believe Whitehead, was it last week? He blew out his shoulder, knocking, was it Scantling out?
I think so, yeah.
And he was just flying all over and just to see a younger player kind of put his body on the line and just laying hits out. It kind of reminded me of Abram. That younger DB just wants to be that hard hitter, kind of bringing that type of mentality back.
Like, he'll make the mistakes, but
yeah, exactly.
You can at least appreciate the fact he's going to 120%.
Exactly, and you're gonna remember him when you take a hit from him. So it's kind of cool to see that. But overall, their defense is very scary. They just they took control of the game, and like I said, when Brady threw those 2 picks, especially towards in the red zone, that put a lot of pressure. I mean, you're going up against Rodgers.
In a record year, I mean, too. I mean, let's
his completion
not downplay
was
the Rodgers.
72%.
I mean, it almost broke the record. I think he was like 71.8 or something like
just
that.
atrocious. Yeah, no, unheard of. So, and that's what I'm saying. They had and to play in Lambeau too, and that was something. I mean, they both were playing for legacy, and that was how many NFC Championships games has Rodgers been to? Do you know?
I mean, I believe it's 5 now.
And he's only won 1. So, I mean, that was a big game for him. And obviously they knew they had a tough task going against him. And Devontae Adams, who's had a hell of a year himself, and Aaron Jones, like I said, and A.J. Dillon. They're a stout team. They're a lethal offense, but, they found a good scheme to defeat them. Obviously, when we played them earlier, though, this year, we had the right answers for their defense. So, and I don't know if that was a fluke necessarily. I'm not going to say Tyreek Hill's going to go out there and, get another 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, so on and so forth. I mean, we played great football that day, and, they just couldn't put anything together. So I'm not expecting us to go out there and kind of blow them out again. And one thing I was going to mention, too, in our playoff games over the last couple of years, we've consistently started from behind. Needless to say, the Bills game too. Going out, they went what
Let's
got the
remember
field goal.
24-0 versus the Texans
Yeah,
last year.
let's just that one's embedded forever. So it's always kind of been like that, and I don't think we've ever actually been that team to go out and just dominate from beginning to end, especially this year. I think our margin was 7 points throughout the year.
Well, I think you guys are also, when you count it back, you look at the whole entire season. It was, I think the Chiefs ended 8-0 to 10-0, somewhere in those numbers in the in between, in games decided by less than 7 points. And it's kind of funny because then you turn around and you watch the Chargers, who are just historically awful at just being mediocre every year. They were like 3-6 in same games too. So the Chiefs definitely, when it comes to the art of the clutch, I think they have it. When it comes down to who's going to win the game. And I do want to backtrack a little bit to kind of what you said, the earlier Week 12 meeting to where you guys did beat them, I believe 27-24. In that game, I mean, Mahomes and Hill just looked lights out. You're talking 462 yards, 3 tutties, 0 picks, and he only got sacked once. Rival that with Brady. He put up 345 yards and 3 TDs, but he also threw 2 picks, only sacked once. But Casey overall, man, 543 yards, which is the most Tampa Bay's allowed all season. Easy enough if you were to watch the film. I think it's their worst performance. And hopefully they can kind of repeat that because, you guys are going up against a big offense in Tampa.
And I do want to mention, actually, this just kind of came across my mind because we signed Spagnuolo, who came from the Giants. I don't know if he was head of their defense when they would have played with Brady in the Super Bowl before, but I think if you look at our coordinators on both sides, obviously Bieniemy being looked at for a head coach for 2 years in a row now, and Spagnuolo, what he's been able to do with our defense 2 years in a row now. Obviously last year we started out slow too and got it together in the second half. Same thing, same look this year. But like I mentioned earlier, we're kind of that team where you start a little bit slower. And yeah, it looks like he was in that 07 year, the year
they upset the perfect Patriots up until that point. So
and I think overall, Reed's familiar with Brady. You have Spagnuolo, who's familiar with Brady. He's familiar with us as well. So that's what I'm saying. When you put it all together, that's why I think these guys really the game planning it's going to have to be, absolutely perfect. And on both sides, it's going to be interesting to see what they draw up. Reed, who just absolutely pulls interesting plays out of the bag, like what we saw last year in the Super Bowl. That play they pulled out of the old college game where we did the little spin around. Yeah. It's cool though. He's very unique, and that's what kind of makes him a fun coach to watch though, because he just draws up. He's so creative. But this is Brady's 10th Super Bowl, and he knows how to rally a team together. So Antonio Brown, Gronk. I mean, they have a lot of good veterans as well, and some guys that are hungry themselves. So, and obviously, everyone's trying to give us their best shot, and those guys being the 6th seed or 5th seed?
Fifth seed this year and 4th seed overall. 5 or lower to actually make the Super Bowl.
So. And I think, obviously, I think we're favored just because we are the number 1 seed. And we went into it being the number 1 seed, but I think overall, I don't think we're favored by much, or we shouldn't be at all. So it's going to be a very close game, I think.
Yeah, and to check the stats, I believe it's 3 points to the Chiefs right now is what ESPN's putting it on, and over-under of 56.5. So
kind of a little bit higher of an over-under, I think, but obviously at the same time, though, when you look at both offenses, they can put up some points and some damage. So, and Scotty Miller, I think he's going to be an interesting one that could. I don't know. I haven't checked his stats on the year.
Well, let's just flip over to that. We'll flip over to the offensive side of the ball. talking about the Chiefs versus the Buccaneers offense. Pretty even here. Just to run the stats back, 2020 Chiefs, 473 points, 6,653 yards, 16 turnovers. Average field position was about the 28.2 yard line, so pretty decent. And flipping over to the Bucs, scored a little bit more with 492 points per game. A little bit less in the yardage with 6,145 yards, 17 turnovers. But their defense really helped them out because they were starting at about the 34.1 yard line every game. We'll kind of start off with the Chiefs offense because obviously this is your bread and butter here. We can name off all the players: Mahomes, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Tyreek Hill, so on and so forth. But this offense, it's historically special. Who do you think is going to be the actual playmaker this game? Is it going to be somebody we slept on, or is it going to be Tyreek, Kelsey, or Mahomes? Like, who actually wins this game for Casey?
Travis Kelsey, I think, is. Travis and Tyreek, they both put up over 100 receiving yards in multiple playoff games now. And they're breaking records with that. And they're playmakers, obviously, along with Patrick. So it's just a three-headed snake. So it's tough to decide. Obviously, they're all going to make their own plays. I don't think any of them are going to get shut down necessarily, unless they try and double up on Hill. But then you look at Kelsey, and if you try and double up on Kelsey, then you look at Watkins. And if you look at Watkins, you look at McCole Hardman. And then you look at our backfield, too. I don't know what they're going to do with Bell. I think they haven't used him to his full potential this year, but I sit on the couch for a reason. Um, and then Clyde obviously has been a heck of a rookie for us. He's a stud. He kind of reminds me of Brian Westbrook, so I love having Andy Reid as his coach. I hope he kind of blossoms to be that type of player too. But yeah, man, I think Tyreek ultimately, unless they find a way to stop Tyreek, I think he's a very underrated top wide receiver in the game, especially in the last couple of years. I think he's top 10, and people put him outside of that, and I almost would say top 5.
Because people sleep on him. I mean, when you look at the top 5 list, I think right now, especially after this year, and there was some controversy with Justin Jefferson and DK kind of putting out their list, and ranking themselves high. But I think right now, who I would consider in that best conversation, I mean, you got to consider Devontae Adams. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is going to be up there, but yeah, I mean, Tyreek is incredibly slept on. He's 5'10", maybe 205 pounds. He packs a lot in, how fast he is. He's actually a pretty strong player. I've seen him stiff arm some fools. But yeah, I mean, he's one of those shorter guys who goes out there. He can get the jump ball. He can run any type of route. I mean, he's everything you ask out of him. But I think just because, once again, it's kind of the discount that Mahomes gets. It's it's the Reed and the Hill and the Kelsey and the system, and it's all the fact that this pizza just comes together that no one wants to give respect to the private ingredients themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. And shout out to our offensive line, man. I mean, like I said, they're so quiet, and you can't look at them. And like I said, without having Schwartz, there's Fisher now, and Fisher was probably the only other name people would know outside of knowing those big names besides obviously the Patty, the Kelsey, and the Hill.
Kelechi Osemele, former Raider.
Yes,
Respect.
Look at you. Yes, and you would know.
Respect.
But and that's what I'm saying though is our offensive line is not the best, but we still find a way to draw up plays, and our receivers find ways to get open, and Kelsey finds ways to get open. But like kind of go back to that play we had in the Super Bowl last year. I forget what they ran, but that Tyreek Hill play towards the end.
Yeah, I'll look it up here, and we'll kind of get back to it. But, I mean, even when you looked at it a couple of weeks back when they did play him in Week 12, because you're not talking an early season matchup. Week 12, not everybody is, 100% going. So I actually did pull it up here. So I know Travis Kelce had 8 receptions for 82 yards in that game, no touchdowns. Pulling it up here. Obviously, we brought up the fact that Mahomes absolutely just balled out. But, I mean, Tyreek Hill added, 11 receptions, 102 yards for a tutty. Yeah. So they had success against him last time. The only thing I would question on Travis Kelce is how we match up schemes here. Because you have Devin White on the other side, and I think that is probably the one guy who can shut down almost any tight end in the NFL. He did a very respectable job against Darren Waller. And I'd kind of put, that Kelce, for me, it's Kelce, Waller, Kittle, but you can always go Kelce, Kittle, Waller, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. Kelce being the best. There's 3 tight ends in the NFL, I think, that are just above the rest. Yeah. And Devin White's proven that he can kind of contain. I wouldn't even say shut down because, Kelce, 8 receptions for 82 yards. It's respectable. But, man, Hill can get open in that offense because there's just so much motion, and they play side to side like a hybrid West Coast offense, and it's kind of interesting to watch.
And that's what makes it so scary, though. And that's like what I said. You can't double someone up because then you look at the next man. You either got Kelsey, you got Watkins if he's healthy. If not, you have McCole Hardman. Demarcus Robinson makes big plays for us every now and then too when he gets called up. Byron Pringle is a name to kind of keep in mind.
Watch him be the next Dwight Smith Super Bowl MVP, go cash in on free agency and just be shit the rest of his career. Also, shout out to Malcolm Smith, too, for the Seahawks. Super Bowl MVP, cashes in with the Raiders, and then was an average linebacker. So who knows? Maybe Mr. Pringle's there.
You might want to go check his player props with my bookie. And that is not financial advice.
This is not a financial podcast. Anything we say, if you lose any money, we are not responsible for that. I just want to state right now.
Just going to put that out there now. One thing I do hope to see, though, I hope we utilize Bell more. Just because as a Chiefs fan, knowing who he was just a couple years ago with the Steelers, like if we would have signed him then, I would have been like, holy shit, we got Le'Veon Bell. But now it's like Clyde has been such a stud, and Darrell Williams. That's who I forgot to mention as
Oh yeah,
well.
I mean he bossed out because well
He's
he kind of fucked me over because I picked Le'Veon Bell in FanDuel and then I'm like, yo, I thought Damian Williams was sitting out the year. What's going on here? They're like, no, that's Darrell Williams, and
that's Darrell, homie.
I'm like, is he the same number? Did they just give him the jersey? Like we didn't want to swap out the backplate. We were just like, here we go, D Williams,
Literally.
word. But yeah, he kind of bossed out in the AFC Championship game a little bit.
He did. He's a hell of a running back, and that's one thing we've always had. I don't know what the hell it is with our franchise, but we've had great luck at that running back position. You look back, obviously, Priest Holmes, Larry Johnson, followed by Jamal Charles, a Hall of Famers, all in my opinion. And then Clyde, Damian Williams balled out for the couple of years.
Let's throw back to the '90s. Little known legend Christian Okoye.
The Nigerian Nightmare.
Yep, I mean that man murdered defenses.
He was an OG, man. No, that's what I'm saying. Going way back. And Tony Richardson at fullback too was a stud. He was a baller, man.
Shout out Anthony Sherman in this game too. Just saying.
The sausage.
I'm scared of that man. Have you seen him? He walks into the fucking game. He's 5'8", so obviously height wise not intimidating. But he weighs 240 pounds and he looks every single ounce of that 240. When he walks in like this cut off sleeve hoodie, and I'm like, well, just here's my lunch money, man.
I think I don't know if they call him the smoked sausage or what. But anyways, it was funny. A couple of years ago, I think it was going into training camp. I was just poking around on their social media, and they had some pictures, and there was a video of him walking in, and it was a American flag, like wrestling singlet. It was just funny as all hell, man. Had a cowboy hat, cowboy boots. He's a character for sure, but he's just kind of a shit brick house at that fullback positions, and he can catch the ball too. He'll make big plays every now and then. So that's what I'm saying. Just we have guys when their number gets called, they actually step up. And our offensive line though they've been huge, even though there's not really that one guy that's kind of been that standout, I think, to kind of help lead the way. Eric Fisher, but not having him in this game is going to be. We'll see what happens and how we can game plan and how we can prepare for that rush, because obviously it was very, very scary against Green Bay, and we cannot let them do what they did to them.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and because you're looking at it, if you do let them do that, I think your defense stacks up about as good as Green Bay's does. But, I mean, man, with that offense, I kind of want to turn pages to that, because when you're talking about the underrated weapons, and when you watch the Chiefs, you see just how deep in talent they are. But, man, to the average fan, you're not going to know a name like McCole Hardman. You're not going to know Darrell Williams. You're not going to know an Anthony Sherman. But when you look at the Buccaneers offense, Jesus, it's like they followed the Lakers free agency plan, and they just said, does everybody know him? Sure, sign him.
No, exactly.
Because at quarterback, you're rocking, Tampa Bay. You're rocking, Tom Brady at quarterback. At running back, Ronald Jones the second, and Leonard Fournette. Just out of nowhere, they get to pick up on the streets. I think everybody's kind of forgotten how good Leonard Fournette really is. But RG2 has been just as good, so it's kind of hard for him to get the carries. And then at the receiving core, you already had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. You go out in the draft, you get Scotty Miller, who's kind of an underrated gem there. You got Gronk, you got Cameron Brate in free agency. You had O.J. Howard, unfortunately, not playing this game due to injury. But then somewhere in the middle of the year, you pick up Antonio Brown. And once again, the stats were really close. But I guess being a Chiefs fan and seeing, obviously, offensive excellence the past 3 years, what do you feel about Tampa Bay's offense when you watch them?
We've overall, I think they're well-rounded. I mean, there's not a full or a hole you need to fill. Yeah, because Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, that's just unheard of. You would think they did a fantasy draft. They've hit the jackpot, and then to have Brate there at and then Gronk at tight end, and then like you said, Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette, and their offensive line is atrocious, I should say. Tristan Wirfs? Is that his name? The rookie.
Yeah, Wirfs, the guy who
I think he's only led not even a sack, maybe just one pressure. I'm not sure, but his numbers are stupid.
I was about to say, we'll check the stats, but I remember watching him in the pre-draft coverage, and this man was in a 5-foot tall pool. He's 6'8", 345 pounds, and he base jumped out of a 5-foot tall pool that was filled with water. So you're talking water resistance, vertical, and I mean that's all the athleticism in their right tackle. I mean, the line has kept Tom clean all year long. You guys obviously have Frank Clark and Chris Jones to kind of rush the passer, get a little bit of juice on Tom. And I think that's going to be your key, because the Chiefs line's going to hold up. You can protect Patty as long as you can, but they're going to get to him, I think, a couple of different times. Pat doesn't really let the pressure get to him, but at the end of the day, I think that's really where you're going to see this game, kind of go.
Well, and I'm happy in a sense. I hate to say it, but I'm happy with our past experiences and just having to play behind in these big games. And especially last year's run, just like you said, that Texans game, man. I remember being in Joe's place, just going into halftime, almost going into halftime, just
I
thinking,
think I was talking mad shit to you.
and it was hard not to, obviously, being a Raiders fan. Or no, I should say going into the second, and then to go out, and then for him, I mentioned it was like Patty scored 4 touchdowns against the Raiders this year, so yeah, I mean you can't count it out. And then for us to go out there and score 4 touchdowns and go into half, holding the lead, and then next week's, I'm a big Derrick Henry fan. He had a hell of a year running the ball, and then that was our big weakness. So was the run defense, and guess what? We stepped up and completed the mission. Jimmy G, that was probably one of the more interesting quarterback performances I think in the Super Bowl. I don't know if he'll ever see a Super Bowl again, honestly.
Probably as a backup, I think his time as a starter in San Fran's done this offseason. A lot of teams are going to be finding quarterbacks.
But even though, their defense was effing stout. Nick Bosa put up stupid numbers, man. I saw something about Frank Clark about in the last 2 years, he's something about a certain amount of pressures. I think it was in 3 games. I forgot the exact number, but he matched Bosa. And he's just ridiculous. So their defense last year, we've faced some tough defenses, and just their offense, though, they're just a juggernaut. So it's going to be a tough task. But like I said, having the experience against them in Week 12 when we played them already, at least we're familiar with them somewhat. So at least we have an idea. So it'll be interesting to see though the game planning. I know Andy Reid's probably sleeping in his office for the next 2 weeks. So God bless him. Big Red, he's going to go get it for us.
Read off a bye. And when you talk about Andy Reid off a bye, the cliches there, but every single time, they take a bye during the season. And then obviously, you kind of saw it earlier in the year with, earlier in the playoffs with, taking that bye in the wild card round and then the divisional round. Andy Reid off of a bye, how important is that for him just to, like you said, just kind of sleep in his office for the next 2 weeks and just come out there and, fuck around with the Buccaneers defense?
Yeah, that's the beauty of it, though. Like I said, last year in that Super Bowl against the 49ers, he gets in his bag, man. He's so creative with what he draws up. And just that little simple play, they did the clap and little spin around. It's just simple stuff like that. And it just it throws the defense off. It's like, all right, do we think too hard on this play or do we stick with what we were going to execute, and do we execute it? And I think that's just what makes it so tough on the defense, though, is because we have so many weapons ourselves. You just don't know what we're gonna do, and I think that's why we're so lethal in a sense, without having big names like Antonio Brown, Godwin, and Mike Evans, and simple as Tyreek Hill as our number 1, and Kelsey being that lethal tight end. And it's cool to see that actually, because Tony Gonzalez is the reason I became a Chiefs fan. And I kind of caught the end of his career, so to actually see a tight end like Kelsey flourish and be that number 1 and be kind of in that conversation of being a Hall of Fame tight end like that. It's cool to see, but
I can tell you one of the best days of my life was when Gonzalez signed with the Falcons. I was like, okay, mad respect, big ups, love you as a player, but I can stop seeing you twice a year now. Because, watching Tony Gonzalez grow up, it's crazy. And then, to be honest, someone who's probably seen a lot of the eye tests with that, and then to go from that to facing Kelsey twice a year, it's crazy because obviously the evolution of players, you're talking bigger, faster, stronger all the time. But, man, Kelsey is just everything Gonzalez was, but just that little bit more. The route running, the hands. Personality is a little bit different. I'd take Travis Kelsey in a bar fight. I'd rather take Tony Gonzalez to a PTA meeting. But, when you're looking at him, I think undisputedly, like, I'm wearing a Darren Waller jersey, and I will openly sit here and say Darren Waller is a phenomenal tight end, but he's still the second best tight end in the NFL next to Travis Kelsey.
Thank you for giving him that respect, because a lot of people sleep on him. But back to, originally the original question on Reid against their defense and what he's brewing up. This is what he lives for, man. And I love that Reid's kind of, you don't see that, usually you don't see that, his emotions. He's just kind of calm, cool, collective, kind of like Belichick in a way. He's focused, man. He's not here to fuck around. He's not worried about simple little shit. Like, he's here for the big one. And that's
he's at the poker table.
That's what I'm saying. And it's nice having that and being able to trust that coach. And like I said, when he called that fourth down play against the Browns with Henny, he called it like it was Patty in the game. And he just trusts everyone, and they trust him, and it's just cool that everyone's invested in each other. So the coaching staff is huge. It's cool, actually. I noticed we have Sam Madison. I kind of forgot about that as a defensive backs coach.
So good old Sam Madison from the Dolphins, and then you guys back in the day.
Yes.
But yeah, to go on to Reed more, and obviously we'll move on from him at some point here. But I'm a huge Andy Reid fan. Watching him with the Eagles, and it was heartbreaking to see him go, but I think that roster had kind of reached the zenith. But just to watch him evolve his team and evolve his game over 15, 20 years, it's crazy, because usually you see old coaches rest on their laurels and they start sucking. They start doing the same old tired shit over and over again, and they don't actually change the offense. And Reed is like at the front of the league right now as far as, scheme difference and kind of that motion offense that's taken over the NFL.
Yeah, just looking at the numbers, I feel like I don't know if everyone was just kind of bored with this year or what. It didn't seem like there was that spark this year. It's crazy I was a big fan of Reed, though, back when he was on the Eagles, just because the teams they had, and they were just fun to watch. And so for kind of him to bring that dynamic to Kansas City too, because I hear a lot of people say that, oh, I'm a Chiefs fan, they're just fun to watch.
Well, not only that, but what other coaches do you have? You start with Eric Bieniemy, but as you just mentioned, kind of Sam Madison.
Yeah, no, that's a huge one. And then another one, Dave Tubb, whatever our special teams, our coordinator, that's been huge.
Respect.
That's been huge over the years on special teams, and that's just a whole nother. Every piece of the game, you got to, on all three levels, you have got to perform and bring that. So and just for him to provide that too on that special teams, people kind of forget about that. That's a whole nother dynamic in the game. And then Steve Spagnuolo on defense, like I said before, him having that experience, especially when Brady had his undefeated season, for him to take that Giants defense and lead them against Brady and hold them out and rain on their parade in a sense. To have him, though, I feel like a lot of people on our staff and our team in general is just familiar with Brady.
Yeah.
And that's the main focus, is Brady, obviously. So I'm excited, though. I know our guys are hitting the film room hard, and I know that's something that we've actually had to do. We finally, like I said before, we finally got over that hump of being like, all right, we made it. We expect to be there because we know we can fucking be there. So I'm expecting everyone to yeah.
Well, and a lot of comparison we talked about between them and kind of like the Patriots, where you're seeing that coaching tree starting to potentially flourish. Obviously, the Patriots didn't really work out long term, but I remember young Patriots teams in the early 2000s compare a lot to the Chiefs. I'm going to shift focus here a little bit, though, to the Buccaneers coaching staff, because while the Chiefs coaching staff is good, and actually I feel like overall slept on, because it's really just viewed as kind of like a Reed Bieniemy type operation. You don't even realize, Spagnuolo and
Madison's for those defensive backs, because we don't have like an Xavier Howard, a top tier, what you would think anyways. Our number one's Brashad Breeland.
Well, DeAndre Baker was playing great until he got hurt too.
Wow.
So
yeah,
God bless him. Obviously, mad respect to the Chiefs, coach, and coaches. But when you look over at this Tampa Bay squad, it's probably intrigues me the most, because you start out with Bruce Arians. And obviously Bruce Arians, he's kind of a little more traditional, like Andy Reid. The vertical passing attack definitely works in today's NFL. He wouldn't be in the Super Bowl if it doesn't. Kind of something of, a little bit like 10 years ago, but still up to date, still putting up numbers. And then just some of the coaches you're bringing in on this team. You got Todd Bowles, defensive coordinator, former head coach of the New York Jets. Byron Leftwich, offensive coordinator, former, I believe, interim head coach for the Cardinals before they brought in Cliff Kingsbury. And, just a lot being talked about with the diversity, too, because they do have 2 female coaches on their staff as well. So just a lot of diversity in this as far as from a cultural perspective, but also just like a game perspective. So when you talk about Bruce Arians, versus Andy Reid, obviously Reid a little bit more of the legacy, but, what do you got to respect out of Arians?
Yeah, Bruce has been, he was coaching when they had Warner and Fitzgerald, am I correct? Or no?
No, a little bit after the fact. That was Palmer. The Palmer years were Arians.
But even then, though, we had a washed-up Palmer, and yet he still, I want to say they had a winning season, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I think they were perennial in the NFC West, even made the playoffs a couple of years. Because that was when Matthew was on the defense, too.
Yes, exactly. What I was referring to earlier. No, Arians is a hell of a coach, man, and just I think he's kind of that hard-nosed coach, though, and like he said, that was his big thing when Brady came in. He's like, we're not just going to tamper him just because he's Brady. He's just still going to he's still like every damn player on this team, so he's not going to treat him any different.
I always talk like mad shit about Brady too. Like the first couple of weeks, like
Exactly.
you kind of noticed how the media was throwing the little rumbles in there. But in all reality, it was just Tom in a new system. He was struggling a little bit, and Bruce Arians was like, "Yeah,
he
he's
needs to."
fucking struggling right now. Like the man needs to pick up his play. He's Tom, Tom fucking Brady."
Yeah,
And
no,
so
exactly.
And it's funny because it seems to be all peaches and cream now. He talks about letting them run the offense and calling plays. But, man, week 5, they were ready to jettison that project.
No, they were, and it's crazy to think that over the last probably I want to say 3-4 years of Brady's career, though he's started the season slow, and everyone's like, all right, this is Brady's is this the year he falls off? But yet they make the playoffs. This year he's in the Super Bowl again at the age of 43. So
Well, and that one's weird because you see it with Breeze. Breeze often starts the season off hot, and you're like, okay, the Saints, Super Bowl contenders for sure. And then, tapers off towards the end of the year. So I guess we will see when it comes down to the game. We are going to get final predictions, prop bets, and everything first. But I got a couple of hot round questions for you. A little bit of off the wall. Here, so everybody knows Patrick Mahomes' fiance. Let's just call her Brittany Mahomes at this point.
Yeah.
She's obviously made a presence for herself on social media. But the trophy husband Tom Brady being with Giselle Bundchen. If I'm butchering that, I'm sorry. Obviously, a powerhouse of her own. So, kickboxing match. Who you got?
oh man, that's tough.
Non-pregnant Brittany Mahomes, we respect the baby, but I'm saying like
And
a
I'll
year and a
make-
half from now.
Obviously, I know more Brittany than I do Giselle. Besides the fact that she is a smoke show.
Giselle's like 6'2" with long legs. Just saying.
Yeah,
Kickboxing
no,
match.
supermodel.
Yeah, supermodel.
Okay, yeah,
like
that's what I'm saying.
the supermodel.
So let's gotta have long legs. All right,
she's
if
the
you're gonna
Tom
be a
Brady of
supermodel,
modeling, and
yeah,
there's more money in modeling than there is football, apparently. So
yeah, no, exactly. So, man, she does have her with the legs, but I do know that Brittany is a workout fiend. I mean, obviously you got to be fit to be a supermodel, so I'm not too sure what her routine would be.
and kickboxing, yoga and stuff like that is very popular among our
I would-
generation. So
Obviously size and all that. Giselle's got it, but I would go Brittany.
see, I would go Giselle just on the pure fact she's a mom. She got to wrangle in them fucking kids because Brady's Brady, man. I mean, there's a reason he's in shape at 43, and she's got a career of her own. So, I mean, I'm sure they got like a maid, but
So, and since you're kind of talking, once again, goat and baby goat, next
baby
gen-
goat on the way. Yeah, they both beat the shit out of Jackson Mahomes, though.
Facts.
All right, fire round question 2. Where are we at on the list here? All right. Controversial players: Tyreek Hill, Antonio Brown. Boxing match. Who you got?
Oh, man, that's a tough one.
Roughly the same size.
Yeah, just for the sole fact that Brown's lost his damn mind already. I don't know. Fuck, I think in this one I might go Brown. Just size and the reach and all that. I think in this one it might matter too much for.
Oh, hands down. Never fight a crazy person. Antonio Brown.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, Brown's lost his mind, and he's got the size and the
microwaves and televisions and shit. You'd be throwing Antonio Brown's own son in front of it, or Tyreek Hill's own son.
Chill.
Obviously, let's go ahead and state now the allegations against Tyreek Hill have been proven false from his kids. So
Thank God.
there'd be some jokes to be made, but yeah, and we'll just go ahead and move on. Number 3, Gronk or Kelsey in a beer chugging contest.
That's also a tough one for me. I mean, obviously, I want to say Kelsey because Kelsey's my guy, but Gronk is an absolute unit.
That man parties for a living.
I
Like,
know.
It's crazy.
He took a year. He retired to party. I feel like.
He retired to pro wrestle. He's a one-time WWE
I mean,
24/7
yeah, I would-
championship. We will be covering wrestling on this podcast, whether everybody likes it or not. So I just want to respect the man in both fields. But he retired while he was champ.
That's not,
Went out on top.
I want to say Kelsey's basically just a mini Gronk in a sense. I got to go with Gronk on that one. But it was cool to see Kelsey do the chug off the Lombardi on the airplane last year.
That was awesome. I'd like to get together like a 10-athlete chugging competition. I mean, you got to put Kelsey, you got to put Gronk in there. I think David Bakhtari
Yeah, I was
from
gonna
the
say,
Packers.
gotta get you got some linemen. Taylor Lewan.
Lewan and Will. Well, maybe not Will Compton because you only need one of the boys on there. McAfee for sure.
Shout out
Obviously.
Bustin' with the Boys.
Shout out to the McAfee show too. Obviously, huge fans of that.
Barstool. No, I would have to say Gronk, but I mean Kelsey. I mean that would be a close one, man. That'd be cool. That'd be cool to see.
You'd almost have to do like a six pack because it couldn't be one beer because I feel like
I feel like that's how they
Yeah.
decide on who. All right, hey, whoever you're going to do a beer chug, a shotgun contest basically, and it's going to be Gronk and Kelsey. Whoever wins, that's who gets to decide whether they want to kick the ball or receive the ball.
so it's
That's what they
it's-
should do.
It's Beer Fest, but it's the week before the Super Bowl. Gronk's the captain of the Buccaneers, and Kelsey's the captain of the Chiefs. I'm like, who wins that beer chugging competition? Because after Gronk, I don't know who really parties on.
That's what I was.
Who really parties in Tampa Bay? I feel like Mahomes can probably put one
Patty.
back. Patty's got to.
I feel like I don't know if Tyreek's really.
Tyreek can put one back. Tyreek can definitely. Put
Patty's
one back.
Patty's definitely up there. That we've all seen videos. We saw him at the Post Malone concert, obviously after a couple big wins last year. I feel like that's kind of something he's known for. So Kelsey and Patty definitely.
I feel like Patty's
feel
a
like-
little bit country to the point where he can chug.
I feel, and he's got that Texas in him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like in the whole league, they'd probably be the best beer pong duo. I bet they'd be. I bet those two.
Could you
would win.
imagine going Brady Mahomes in beer pong? God, that'd fucking suck. I mean, Gronk's probably really good, but I mean Brady just because of the accuracy with the football, you got to assume the ball accuracy is there too on the table.
Yes. Well, what I think they should do is they should do a shotgun between Kelsey and Gronk to see who receives or kicks to start the first half.
Yeah. Fuck the coin toss.
Could you imagine that? The views and the props on that?
Yeah,
Just for that, say, oh, they're doing a, not even, what would you call that for not even coin toss? I guess you can still call it coin toss in a sense, but.
yeah, the beer toss.
The beer toss,
Tossing them back. Tossing them back.
Beer toss. Yeah, Gronk overall, though. That's who I'm taking in that one.
Sounds good. All right. Well, let's go ahead and finish it up here. Obviously, we got the over-under of 56.5. You were a betting man, and obviously we are betting men. We will be betting on the Super Bowl. We're fucking Americans.
Degenerates.
Yep, because it's 2021. Go out and help bet. But legalize sports betting nationwide.
God bless.
But yeah, over-under 56.5. What do you got?
Man, this is Super Bowl, so you hope for a good show. I'm going to say over. Life's too short to bet the under.
Well, especially when it's Mahomes Brady. I mean, if there's any part of like the NFL that's setting this up, they can't set it up and then have it be a shitty Super Bowl.
No, exactly. And I think if you look at the last two times they played, I know it's broke 50 at least. So it's just going to come down to defense.
Oh, exactly. I would. We were talking about this on the earlier recording, and I would put probably a small bet out there and buy down the points to like a stupid amount, just because obviously we're talking. Rams,
If you
Patriots.
teased it, I would take the under.
Yeah.
Either or,
tease
though.
the
Either
under.
or.
Tease it down.
That's tough. If you tease it though, I'd probably take the under for sure if you teased it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be fun to watch though.
And then we got the Chiefs by 3 points. My bookie's probably going to be a dick and play at 3.5 points. You know, how they
I
play.
know.
But
Might
yeah,
have to
so-
buy that half a point.
Right, yeah, right. I'm gonna have to buy that half point down. But yeah, by 3 points. Who you got in that instance? Because obviously you're picking the Chiefs for who's gonna win. But
Yeah,
Chiefs
well, because
by
I
3.
think it will be a close one. It's checking the fact that we've only had a margin of usually about 7-point spread between all our games throughout the year. We're not good against the spread, but it is only a 3-point spread, so I feel confident, and I like it. So I will take it. I like us in that one.
My nightmare scenario in all of this, in all of the playoffs, and I was talking about this, even just going into championship weekend, I'm like, the greatest thing would have been the State Farm Bowl to have the Chiefs play the Packers. And even then, I would have taken Josh Allen playing Aaron Rodgers. That would have been cool. But I just love Tom Brady, respect his greatness. But the fact that he even made it back, I'd have to take Tampa Bay against the spread just because if they lose, it's going to be by 1 or 2 points. It's going to be that bullshit where like an extra point comes into play and then the Chiefs kick a field goal and win by 2. Something like that to where the spread ain't happening or Tampa Bay's just straight up winning. So
Yeah, no, he's not going to go out easy. It'll be a
yeah,
battle.
Yeah, I'll be going for the Chiefs, but I'm going to pick the final score of the Super Bowl. I'm going to say Tampa Bay 35, KC 37.
I like that. That would be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, 1 missed extra point, field goal at the end. Harrison Bucker for the dub.
Booty kicker.
Yep, my fantasy kicker this year who did pretty fucking well for me in my championship team. So also shout out to Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. Any fantasy MVPs you want to shout out before we go off air?
Derrick Henry, the king, my guy. I've been on that train for a couple years now, and he's He's kind of that second half guy. He just comes out quiet and then he just absolutely dominates. Got over 2,000 this year, so
over 2K.
and just an absolute crazy season. It was crazy. The last couple of years, I've had him and Patty both on my team, and the last 2 years I've gone between them on having them as my keeper. Thankfully, I was able to keep Henry this year, and I drafted Mahomes, so I was able to keep them both again. But yeah, I would say Derrick Henry's my and Patty. Actually, Patty had a quiet year in fantasy. I take that back.
Yeah, 2018 Patty was a monster.
Yeah.
I did have Brady in 2007. Fucked around in my church league at the time. 12, 13-year-old Cole playing church league fantasy football, whooping up on youth pastor Todd with Randy Moss, Tom Brady, and then Adrian Peterson in his rookie year too. That will always be a great fantasy football team.
Well, Allen Robinson's another one that has a pretty consistent on fantasy, even though his team's trash.
Bring him to Vegas. Bring him to Vegas. This is the recruit. It's the recruit. Allen Robinson III. We need you in Vegas.
Right.
But anyways, bud, appreciate you coming on. Sorry about the earlier recording.
No, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy I was able to run it back with you.
Sweet. Well, signing off for Beers and Bullshit. By the way, at Top Wave Studio, we just want to thank you guys. We're out.
See you at work tomorrow.